You want to start seeing how are you showing up? How are you behaving in the organization? Now, I'll give you a couple hints here. If you're invited to a lot of the executive meetings, you're included in the executive get-togethers, and you participate in all of the board meetings, probably doing pretty good. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, 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 welcome. I hope you know what time it is. It's time for Life of a CISO with yours truly. Dr. E is in the house. Woohoo! Hope everyone is doing awesome. Hope you are having an amazing week. And what I want to start off with on today's episode, world-class people think differently. World-class CISOs think differently. They act differently. Did you ever wonder why you have this large group of people and then there's this smaller subset of people that are world-class? It's because they're acting and thinking differently. And it's pretty basic. If they were acting and thinking like everyone else, then they wouldn't be different, right? So what makes people different is based on how you think, and how you think dictates and drives how you act. And the big one I want to start off with is world-class CISOs are problem solvers. I often use the phrase a lot, cybersecurity is a business enabler. And it sounds great, but that's probably one of the number one questions I get going, but Dr. Cole, how do you do that? How do you actually make cybersecurity a business enabler? It's by thinking differently. And this is where transitioning from a world-class security engineer to a world-class CISO is so critical. Because world-class security engineers focus in on problems. I remember when I was starting to work in cybersecurity, and there was this world-class security engineer that was older than me, more advanced than me. And at first it drove me crazy because all he did was sit in meetings and basically identify problems. He'd go in there and say, oh, well, there's a vulnerability there and there's a weakness there and you can't do that there and you can't do this here. And it would frustrate me, but everyone was like, oh, that's awesome. And I'm like, why is that awesome? And I guess deep down inside, I was always that CISO wanting to come out, right? But what I realized is that's what world-class security engineers do. They find and focus in vulnerabilities and weaknesses to improve the system. The problem is they then toss it over to somebody else to fix it, to solve the problem or come up with a solution. Now, yes, some world-class security engineers also do come up with solutions, right? And they do help in that area. But if you look at the primary job, the primary reason why you're going to bring in a world-class security engineer into a project is not to tell you everything is fine. It's to tell you where the vulnerabilities and where the issues and where the problems are. And some folks get caught in that swim lane. And if you get caught in that swim lane, you can be an okay CISO, but you're never going to be world-class. Making cybersecurity a business enabler means we're looking at solutions that improve the business. I'm going in and I'm giving you a solution that's going to make your system better. That's going to improve your product. That's going to go in and help you have a better, faster, more secure system. That's what world-class CISOs do. World-class CISOs essentially call BS, because it is BS, to the phrase that people love using. I hear this phrase all the time. You can have performance, functionality, or security. Pick one. Why? I want all three. That's stupid to say pick one. Why in the world can't you build a system that has performance, has functionality, and has security? Why do you have to choose, right? You absolutely can do it. That's what world-class CISOs do. Average CISOs say pick one. World-class CISOs say don't pick, we'll give you all three. That's the mindset shift. They think differently. They're looking at solutions at a deeper level of how to really protect and help the organization. And of course, you know, I always have a story, right? So think differently. Here's one of my favorite stories. I have lots of favorite stories, but this is a really cool story. And just listen closely because it takes a couple seconds to sink in. So there was this professional golfer that was invited over to Saudi Arabia to spend several days playing golf with the king of Saudi Arabia. So they flew him over on the king's private jet, put him up in the nicest hotels possible, the finest meals, and this professional golfer and the king spent many days playing on the best golf courses, just playing golf, getting advice, getting tips and tricks from the professional golfer. And at the end of the trip, the king went up to the professional golfer and said, I want to give you a gift. You took time out of your schedule. You flew over here, and I'd like to give you a gift. And the golfer said to the king, you put me up in the finest hotels. You provided the meals. You paid for everything. No gift is necessary. That is a gift in and of itself. And the king insisted. The king said, no, no, no. I always give gifts to my guests. What gift would you like? So the professional golfer was thinking and trying to sort of be humble but balanced. And the professional golfer collects golf clubs, putters, drivers, different golf clubs. So the professional golfer just said to the king, just get me a golf club. Just get me a golf club and we'll be good. And the king said, deal. Now the professional golfer flying back to the United States couldn't help but think, what type of golf club is a king going to send me? Is it a putter that has diamonds on it? Is it a driver made of solid gold? Right? He's just imagining all these very elaborate golf clubs that the king might send. So he gets back to the United States, and weeks go by, and no gift arrives. So the golfer's confused, going, did the king forget? Did the king seem very insistent on getting me a gift, but didn't send me anything? Then, a couple weeks later, a box comes in the mail. And it's from the king. And the golfer's looking at the box confused, going, this is too small for a golf club. Like, golf clubs are long, right? Putters or drivers or the different golf clubs, I mean, they're pretty big. And this was not a big box. So, confused, he opens it up, and there's a lot of paper. And as he goes through the paper, he realizes that it's a deed to a 36-hole golf course, golf club, right? Golf club, golf course in Arizona. And that was the gift from the king. Now think about this, right? The professional golfer said golf club and thought a putter or a driver. When a king heard golf club, he thought 36-hole golf course, right? And the whole lesson in this story is kings think differently, right? The golfer was thinking at this level when he said golf club, and the king was thinking at this level when he heard golf club, right? They both heard the same words, but they thought differently. They viewed it differently. So the thing I urge you to do in all areas of your life, of course, I'm focused on life of a CISO and being world-class CISO, but in all areas of your life, are you thinking like a king or a queen, right? So either way, I use that generically. So I use it generically to cover both. But are you thinking differently? How do you think? How do you act? How do you behave? And I really want to hone in on the CISO part, but world-class people think differently. World-class CISOs think differently. They act differently. When I go in and people tell me, Eric, you're different or you're unusual, you're a little strange, I'm like, thank you. Now, I don't think they always mean it as a compliment, but I take it as, because guess what? They're saying I'm different and unique. I don't want to be like everyone else, right? I want to be my own unique version. And that's the same thing, is if you're acting and behaving like everyone else and most people are average, then you're thinking and acting like average people. But if you find a few elite world-class folks and you act and behave like them, then just by association, you're guilty by association, then you start acting and behaving like a world-class CISO. So remember, world-class CISOs look for solutions. And I always remember this because when I first started at the government working in cybersecurity, this was back in the 90s, so it was a little different, time, different place. When I started in cybersecurity, the web didn't exist, just to give you perspective. Right? If you had an email account in the 90s, it was essentially AOL.com. Right? I mean, it was an AOL account, was pretty much email. That's really all that existed back then. So different time, different place. But still, I remember when I first started working in cybersecurity, one of the more senior folks said, Eric, let's go for a walk. I'm going to teach you about cybersecurity. And he goes, here's how we do cybersecurity at the government. I'm going to send you to meetings. And those meetings, you're going to listen. You're going to take notes, and at the end of the meeting, they're going to ask you a simple question. Do we have security's approval to move forward? Is this system considered to be secure to move forward? And he goes, no matter what they present, no matter what they say, no matter what they put in place, just sort of look at your notes, nod your head a little, and go, no. Then, if you get invited to a second meeting, once again, take notes, act engaged, act interested. And at the end of that meeting, if they ask you again, say no. And he goes, at that point, most folks will go away. The project wasn't that serious, it wasn't that interested, and they figure they're not going to get approval, so they won't move forward. But if they call you a third time and say, we really need security's approval, then involve me or a senior person, and we'll go along and make the actual decision. Now, whether that was right or wrong, that was very similar to how many people and many world-class security folks did cybersecurity. Their job was to say no. Their job was to be a roadblock. Their job was to say, this is too vulnerable, this is too big a risk, and you shouldn't do it. Now, here's the problem. Today, where we have projects, fast-moving, DevOps, and all those things, what do you think is going to happen if you try to be the roadblock? If you try to say no or you try to point out all the vulnerabilities? They're going to do it anyway and just not invite you to the meetings, right? So world-class CISOs, your answer is always yes, but. Now, I'm not saying you should do crazy stupid, right? I'm not saying if somebody goes in and says, we want to put all of our data on the internet with no encryption and no passwords, you should be like, we can't be a roadblock, right? We got to let it through. No. But you could go, yes, but. Yes, if that's what you want to do, then here's how you do it. We would need to go in and create several front-end portals. We would have to create verification processes. We would have to tie that to the different business. But here's the cool part. We could use that as a marketing tool. So now, because we're setting up and gathering that information to access the data, we now have additional marketing that can be done. So we're now enabling the business even more. And then, because we're capturing all the information and doing all the data, and we have additional data they might want, we can do upsell opportunities. So now we can go in and increase the revenue for the company by doing all this security. So notice how I just laid it out. Instead of going in and saying no, instead of going in and disabling the business, I said, yes, you can do this, but let me show you how to do it, not only in a more secure way, but do it in a way where the security increases marketing, increases sales, and benefits the business as a whole. So that's the focus and mindset. Now, depending on your background, depending on how many years you have as a world-class security engineer, that might be something that's not natural or common to you. It's learned. You can train yourself, right? But it is going to take time. So being a world-class CISO, You need to start being very, very, very aware of your behavior. Do you say yes or do you say no when it comes to security? Do you go in and present roadblocks or do you present solutions? Do you go in and disable the business or do you go in and make cybersecurity a business enabler? Those are all questions you want to start asking yourself. You want to start seeing, how are you showing up? How are you behaving in the organization? Now, I'll give you a couple hints here. If you're invited to a lot of the executive meetings, you're included in the executive get-togethers, and you participate in all of the board meetings, you're probably doing pretty good. Because those things wouldn't be happening if you were negative, if you were a no, if you were a roadblock. If those things are happening where executives want to include you, you are invited to all the meetings, and you are part of that inner C circle, the CEO, COO, CFO, CIO, CISO, right? You're part of that inner circle of 5 or 6 people who have C in front of their name, then you are probably doing a good job, because you wouldn't be in that inner circle if you weren't. Unfortunately, that's few and far between. Right? Most of the CISOs I run across are not in that circle. And they're frustrated because they have the C title, but they're one of the few people with the C title that's not part of that inner circle. Right? If you take everyone with the C, they all get together for Friday lunch, but the CISO's not included. They all get together for executive outings, and the CISO's not included. Right? So it's sort of the CISO is one of the few executives that have the C, but are not acting, behaving like a C, and the reason is simple. They're not being a business enabler. They're not helping the business be successful. So you want to make a big shift. Now, one way of doing that is address the issue. Because I get all the time going, okay, Eric, I see what you're saying. And I did make that mistake, but the damage is done. They don't view me as one of the executives. They don't view me as speaking business. They view me as a techie, and they view me as a problem identifier, not a problem solver. So how do I fix it? The way you fix it is you address it. I would actually set up a meeting with the COO, CFO, CEO and say, listen, I know in the past I spent too much time on the technical side identifying problems and not really supporting the business. I needed to do that because there were problems and issues. I have that fixed, but I feel to support the organization as best as possible, I need to shift to more of an executive role. So I just want to let you know that I would like to start being involved in more of those meetings. I would like to start helping enable the business and increase profitability and revenue and be part of that executive team, because I think cybersecurity is so important that it needs to be part of those discussions. Now, they're going to pause. They're not going to be sure. Now, here's the critical part. They're going to test you. They're going to invite you to a meeting. They're going to include you in a meeting. If you show up like the old person, that was your last meeting. Because in their mind, you lied. You said you're ready to go and you're not. But if you show up and you're focused on the business and you're asking strategic questions and you're listening and you're not trying to just talk and be the smartest person in the room and you're really providing value and input, they'll go, Eric really is trying and making a difference. Let's invite him again. And then you'll get another chance and another chance and another chance. What I want you to avoid is what I see happen in a lot of organizations. And it's this. I went up to New York City to meet with one of the top banks up there. They're one of our clients. We're doing a lot of executive awareness and executive briefings for the board and really helping to view cybersecurity at a business level to integrate it into the business. And I show up on a Thursday at around 10:30, And because I've been there a lot and the executive assistants know me, I sort of get the hall pass, right? Yeah. So I'm able to go down to that inner sanctum where the executive offices are. And I just swing by the CEO's office, and the COO just happens to be in there. So I just pop my head in, hey, and, oh, come on in, Eric, come on in. So we're just sitting on the couch, just talking and chatting, right, about business and various things and this and that. And then CFO walks by. Oh, CFO pops in, and we're talking. Then Chief Legal Counsel pops in, and we're all just talking. And it's about 11:30. And I'm like, oh, should we all go to lunch? Sure. Right, so that inner core of CEO, COO, CFO, Chief Legal Counsel, and me, we all go to lunch. Then we're at lunch, and one of them looks at their clock and goes, it's 12:45. We better wrap up because we got to get back for the 1 o'clock. And a few of them like, oh yeah, the 1 o'clock. And one of them's like, oh, what do we have at 1 o'clock? And I kid you not, that's our monthly meeting with the CISO. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, is this really happening? I'm like, is this like, I don't know, a bad dream or something? I'm like, is this really going down the way it's going down? And I'm like, yeah. And I said, at first I wanted to ask a lot of questions and saying, what's going on? Why do you not like the CISO? What's the problem? What's the issue? But I said, I have a golden opportunity. In 15 minutes, I can observe and I can see. So I asked just a simple question. Can I sit in on the 1 o'clock? And they're like, yes, Eric, of course, we were hoping you would. That was one of the reasons why I wanted you to come up here, just so you can sit in. So I said, great. So I sat in on the 1 o'clock, and I didn't say a word. I just let the CISO do their brief. It's a 30-minute meeting once a month where they update on security. Now, first thing, the CISO walks in, I kid you not, with 43 slides. And they give each of us a 43 slide deck. And I'm like, 30-minute meeting, talking about high-level strategy for business, and you have a 43 slide deck. I'm like, okay, this isn't going to go good. But I'm going to observe. Then I started flipping through the slides. And they're busy. There's data. There's all this analytical information from all the different security tools. And I'm just like, this is really not going to go good, right? And they get in there and basically give a extremely technical briefing for 30 minutes. Most of the executives in there are on their phone most of the time, right? Not really paying attention, doing other things. And I'm just observing this whole thing going down. I'm just like, oh, this is bad. So then it ends, and the CISO leaves, and I run after the CISO, and I say, how do you think that meeting went? Oh, Eric, I crushed it. I crush it every month. Do you see the level of detail I have? Do you see how thorough I am with the information? Do you see how much return on investment they're getting for cybersecurity? And I'm like, interesting. I said, question. I'm just spitballing here, not judging at all. I said, but if you really crushed it, do you think maybe people would have some questions? And they're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. And I said, and if they really crushed it, do you really think most of the people would be on their cell phone for 90% of the presentation? And he was like, okay, I see where you're going here. And I said, just give your perspective. Everyone in that room, when you were briefing, had a C in front of their title. And you were all the C's in the company. So that was conclusive of everybody who had chief in front of their name. Do you realize everyone but you have been meeting since 10:30? Everyone but you has gone to lunch, and everyone but you is still in that room talking. Maybe you're not playing the role the way that you should, right? And like I said, I wasn't trying to be mean or a jerk. I was trying to do some teaching moments here. But the point is, you were giving people what you wanted. And the big issue with many CISOs, they're still wearing the security engineer hat. They're still being world-class security engineer. That presentation would have been amazing for the IT team. It would have been amazing for the security team. It was an amazing presentation on the technical measures of cybersecurity given by a world-class security engineer. But guess what? You're not a world-class security engineer anymore. You're a world-class CISO. And this is one of the reasons why many people push back, and I say it so hard. It is not impossible, but the longer you're a world-class security engineer, the harder it is to be a world-class CISO. In my experience, the best CISOs are people who have worked in security for 3 to 5 years because they know enough about security. They're borderline world-class, but they're not really have all the bad habits yet. And they're really more interested in business because if they weren't, they would stay on the security engineer track. So to me, that's really the sweet spot. Now, if you have 12, 15 years as a world-class security engineer, can you become a world-class CISO? Yes, but it's much, much, much harder because the longer you do something, the more comfortable you get doing it. The more you do something, the more bad habits you have built, or good habits, depending on which side, right? So the more you've done something, the more you're accustomed to keep doing it that way. So that's why you have to be very, very careful. The longer you stay as a world-class security engineer, the harder it's going to be to become a CISO because you got to switch everything. It's no longer focused on problems. It's focused on solution. It's no longer focused on the technology. It's focused on the business. World-class security engineers think cybersecurity is a technical problem. World-class CISOs know that cybersecurity is so much broader, that cybersecurity is a business problem. And as soon as you act and treat it like a business problem, everything changes for you. Everything is different. Now, to me, IT is definitely a technical problem, right? IT is focused on one thing and one thing alone, and that is uptime availability. Making sure your infrastructure, system, servers, and network has a 99.999% uptime availability. That is about as technical a problem as you can get. Cybersecurity is all about understanding, managing, and mitigating risk of your critical assets being impacted. That's a business problem, right? That's not a technical problem. It's a business problem that has a lot of components and a lot of pieces involved in order to do that. So the more you can recognize that world-class CISOs think differently, the better you're going to be. Remember the king example. When an average person says golf club, they think putter driver. When a king hears golf club, they think golf course. When an average CISO thinks cybersecurity, they think technical problems. When a world-class CISO hears cybersecurity, they think business enabler, how to help and secure the business. And the way to do that is to listen, understand the business, and ask questions. As a world-class CISO, you should be asking questions on what is our revenue, what is our profit, what is our competitors, what does our future outlook look like? Are we going to acquire new companies? Are we going to grow organically? What is our growth curve? Are we going to grow 20% or 70% or 80% a year? That's what world-class CISOs think about. Now, it's funny. I was coaching a new CISO, and I went over that with them, saying, that's what world-class CISOs think about? And he goes, no, Eric, you're confused. That's what executives think about. That's what an executive, that's what a CEO and a COO and a CFO think about. And I'm like, and what is that C in CISO again? And they said, chief. I said, so doesn't that make you an executive? And it was funny, it was this awkward pause where they're like, oh, now I get, right? A CISO is an executive. You are one of 4 to 5 people. Now, in some companies, there might be 8 people with a C, but you're a limited group of people with a C. A C means you are an executive. It means you are focused on profitability, revenue, growth, and expansion of the business. And as soon as we can get that, as soon as that clicks with a CISO, that you're an executive, you're focused on business, and your strategic tool is using cybersecurity to enable the business, that's when everything starts changing for you and you become world class. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Life of a CISO. And remember, world-class CISOs think differently.